Hello there, and welcome to the 2021 New Zealand Grocery State of the Nation in video. Yes, we're doing it a bit different this year to make this the most accessible State of the Nation you have ever had. My name's David Shukri, and driving the shopper thought leadership in New Zealand is Country Manager Andrew Arnold. How you doing, mate?
Good, David. How you doing?
Very good, thank you. Very good. Lots more to come from Andrew in just a moment. First, though, what is our reason for being here today? The intent today, as it always is for Shopper Intelligence, is a simple one: helping you to put shoppers at the heart of your conversation, because that's how you can drive better relationships and better business outcomes. So over the course of this video and two others, Andrew's going to give you some of the vital ingredients you need to understand your shoppers, to understand the shopper landscape, influence your retail partners, and lead the way to both brand and category growth. Now, in many aspects of your life today, you may in some respect be mid-jump. We're living through something which we all hope is going to be a once-in-the-lifetime event, and the ripples from that are being felt pretty much everywhere. Grocery, of course, is no exception, even though the industry that we work in has largely had a pretty good ride through COVID. Sales are up and margins are up as well, but we are still in this mid-jump position. There's plenty of opportunity to continue to improve and perform well, but so much has changed since the pre-COVID world, the pre-pandemic world, that if you carry on doing what you were doing before, then there is certainly a risk of failure. Retailers could lose because other platforms and other channels are fighting hard for share of mouth. Suppliers could lose because the competitive threats from things like private label, challenger brands, even just the very way that retailers are repositioning their brands and their stores to deliver to a changing mindset. So what does that change look like? And what do you do about it? Well, we've broken this down into three sections, three big focus areas. The video you're watching right now is part one, and it's all about defining value. And as important as price is, there are other factors that are playing a part in the value equation, and you need to be aware of those today. In part two, we're going to explore the mindset occasion, how the mindset of shoppers today varies hugely depending on their intended occasion and their intended mission, what that shopper is demanding, and then how you retail to that need. In the third part of this series, we'll head into omnichannel grocery retailing, the latest buzzword, but what does it really mean? And we'll be sharing a framework and an approach to help you steer your category investment. So let's get this one underway, Andrew, and start by defining value.
Yep, definitely. So let's have a look at what shoppers view as important. That's a pretty good place to start. So what you're seeing here, this is a question where we ask shoppers to rate on a scale of 1 to 5 how important they view these factors when they're shopping for the category that they've bought. And so we then roll all of these up to get a view across the entire store to understand what matters the most. Now, at first glance, there are three factors which have the highest overall scores on importance, and those are the ones over to the left: freshness, quality, and price. But when we look at what's changed over the last 12 months, though, a couple of things stand out. These two factors here. Firstly, shoppers are placing more importance on the emphasis, or placing more emphasis, I should say, on the importance of price, which in other words is the overall perception that they have of price. There's also more importance attached to healthy options. So that's your free from, or your gluten-free, or your low sugar options. So those two have got significantly more important over the last 12 months. But when we lower the bar just a little bit, you can see there's also some pretty big increases that are happening elsewhere as well. Now, we can group these other factors essentially into two areas. The first one would be pricing factors. Price, overall price perception, fixed low price, so EDLP, or everyday price reassurance, and offers. That's the first group. The second group is what we call trusted quality. So this is things like quality, healthy choices, which we've already mentioned. New Zealand made is another one that comes through quite strongly, and also range. Now, what we do know is that every shopper engages in a value equation every time they buy something. So we've got here quite an interesting quandary. We've got the importance of price going up, but what shoppers expect in terms of quality and what they buy, or product characteristics, is also going up.
Now, Andrew, it should be said, shouldn't it, that this is not a global trend, right?
No, definitely not. I mean, we've actually got quite a unique experience happening here in New Zealand. So when you compare what's going on to other countries worldwide, you can see what we're talking about here. You've got Australia and the UK also increasing on price importance, and this is, comparing now with pre-COVID times. So you've got the UK and Australia going up in importance, but you've got the USA and Canada going in the other direction. And in fact, you've got the USA going in downwards at quite a significant rate of knots. So that's quite a big change that's going on there. It is true to say that none of the countries that we're showing here have escaped the impact of COVID. All of them have had restrictions imposed to some degree, some more than others, some possibly less than others, but all that has impacted shopper mindsets. But even taking that into account, we're the only ones down here in New Zealand who have actually responded to price like this in the short term. And when you also consider that the importance of price is pretty consistent across all these markets, which is those numbers at the bottom there, what's actually happening in the short term here in New Zealand does actually stand out.
Something very special going on in New Zealand, Andrew.
Yes.
So practically speaking, when shoppers are making their decisions, how is price actually being used? How's that playing out in their minds?
Yeah, that's a very important factor here, because we need to understand what price's role is in decision making. And the best way to do that is to consider how shoppers actually use price when they're planning to buy something. And the reason why that's a good place to start is because a lot of New Zealand shoppers plan. We're basically looking at almost 3/4 of all shoppers will plan in some way, shape, or form what they buy when they go grocery shopping. And by the way, that number has been pretty consistent over the years. But when you start looking at how shoppers use price to plan, this really interesting trend starts to come out. And that actually is that shoppers are using price less to plan than what they used to do. So we asked this question in quite a few different ways in order to make sure we've got a really good handle on it. But it doesn't matter what metric we look at in this area, shoppers are planning on price less and less over time. Now, we do know, what we just looked at before was that the importance of price has risen in the short term. But when you start looking at over the longer term, a different story starts to emerge. And that's what's on the right-hand side here. You've got these trusted quality metrics like authenticity, like premium, for example, and quality as well. Those have all risen in importance far more over a 5-year period than what price has done. So we have this short-term blip in price, which we definitely cannot ignore. But the longer term clearly shows us that trusted quality is a really, really big part of this value equation.
Yeah, there's a very interesting trend playing out there. Just to round out though on this price point, Andrew, you can't ignore that taken in isolation, price remains one of the most important purchasing factors for New Zealand shoppers. What's interesting here on this slide then is as we zoom in to the individual banners, you can see how each banner inhabits this very different place in the minds of their shoppers as far as price satisfaction is concerned, even though there isn't actually that much between the retailers in terms of overall satisfaction.
Yeah, that's exactly right, because Pak'nSave has always been that banner with the highest level of price satisfaction. And we've tracked this over 6 years now, and they've never lost that leadership in that area. And you've always had New World at the bottom end of price satisfaction, although still good. We're not saying that those scores are bad by any stretch of the imagination, but they've always been at the lowest end of the spectrum. And Countdown has always been somewhere near to the middle. But overall satisfaction has bounced around a lot over the years. So it's not just price we're talking about here. We're talking about other factors as well. And even now you've got Countdown and New World with the same level of overall satisfaction at plus 52%, even though there is that very clear difference between their individual levels of price satisfaction. So clearly other factors are driving shopper satisfaction in those banners, While the other side of the coin is that Pak'nSave arguably are probably not doing as well in those other factors which determine satisfaction as well, because price is doing so well there. And that's, also take into account the fact you have this big spike that's happened from 2020 to 2021. So this all sort of boils back, though, as to how do you move the needle on price? Well, you focus on the categories where it matters the most. But that same point holds true in every single other area that we talk about as well. And that is the key to reframing this value equation.
Okay, so let's go ahead and talk through some of these other areas. What do they look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So our starting point really is those three trusted quality factors that have shown the importance over the past 12 months. So these three here: quality, New Zealand made, and healthy choices. Quality is one of the highest rating factors overall. Absolutely very important to New Zealand shoppers. But when you start putting in New Zealand made and healthy choices into the equation as well, what you've actually got here is the three top overall trusted quality factors too, in terms of importance. So, these factors, they really do matter. They're an important part of how you define value at the individual category level. So if you just revisit just what I said about a minute or so ago about, how do you move the needle? You focus where it matters. You fish where the fish are. So here we've got the top 10 categories in terms of quality, which, where the quality perceptions need to be the highest. We've got the top 10 categories where it is most important to push New Zealand made or New Zealand point of origin stories, or that messaging factor. And we've also got the top 10 categories here where it's most important for shoppers to understand that there is a range of healthy options that are available for them to buy. Now, it's important to note one thing here, that even if you don't see your categories in these top 10s, it doesn't mean you don't have shoppers that view these factors as important in your category, because you might be ranked in the top 30, for example, or you might be inside the top 50, which is still really important. Or there might be some aspect of the category, like a particular brand or a particular segment, or maybe even a pack size. It could be even something as simple as that, where these things do actually matter. So you really do need to understand in your individual categories what that lever is and how you pull it to your advantage. You need to use that as part of your toolbox.
Yeah, this is true. This is true. And another key point here, Andrew, is, and this is the reason why we're talking about this and the need to reframe the value equation, is that there isn't a great deal of correlation between appearing in these lists and being a high price importance category, especially as it turns out in the case of healthy choices in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, shoppers perceive value in different ways. The price is just one of those ways that they do that. And you've also got this other scenario too, which is where different banners are leading on delivery in these metrics too. So that value equation can be influenced by a whole bunch of things, not just price, but the value equation will differ depending on the banner that you're talking about. So there's also a second area that I would like to highlight, and that's sustainability. So the performance of sustainability in the eyes of the shopper in New Zealand has actually improved quite a lot since before COVID actually, came upon the scene. And when I think about it, there's been quite a few things going on in the marketplace that I have seen, which, brings this to life. Like one of the biggest examples I can think of is compostable potato chip bags, for example. I mean, I've got 2 packs of them upstairs right now, where where those are great. You empty them, you put them in the garden bag, and they compost over time. It's brilliant. Other things like less plastic in milk bottles is another good example of that. But when you compare that with our international peers, there's still a little bit of opportunity here for us. Now, we do compare very favorably with Canada in terms of recent performance, which is the arrow, but also the overall score that shoppers have on sustainability. We do lag the UK and Australia, though, in terms of the overall score that shoppers give in terms of their satisfaction with sustainability. And we also are lagging the US in terms of the pace of change that is happening there. Now, why is this important? It's important because this is another way that we can reframe that value equation.
So makes sense. We'll have a look now and see what we can glean from overseas markets. And in particular, let's have a glance at the US, which was a market and is a market that invested early in this kind of thing. All of these initiatives launched a few years ago now, so they've had an opportunity to mature. You see Albertsons, first of all, there is a recognized leader in sustainable seafood policies, and the focus for them right now is in converting all of their private label products to sustainable options in the next year. So it's a very big target that they're driving for. Second example there is from a business called Loop. Loop is working in partnership with a number of retailers, the first of which I think in the US was Kroger, to reduce waste by essentially renting out reusable versions of packaging for 100 well-known branded products. And then the last example there is from Aldi. Aldi is rated #1 in the US for sustainability, particularly around its packaging pledge. Now, all of these things drive positive shopper perceptions, Andrew.
Yeah, they do. And it's very easy for someone like Aldi to be able to drive that packaging pledge because of the level of private label that they have in their business. But the point is they're doing it. And why are they doing it? Is because of the effect that's having on their bottom lines. So if you just look at some of these just straight numbers that come out from the States, the share of sustainable products in the States right now is 16%, which is, when you think about it, is a massive number. It's a huge amount to be in such a short space of time for the market share to have reached that level. All that sustainable product is also growing at massive rates, 7 times as fast as what traditional lines are growing. It accounts for over half of all new product growth in the last 12 months in the States. And the biggest thing of all is that the sensitivity to price is lower because all these products average out at 39% price premium. So shoppers are willing to pay more if they can see the reason behind the higher price tag. And in this case, it's sustainability. So what's this telling us is that if you invest early enough, if you're able to drive the conversation in the way that you want to drive it, there are some pretty significant benefits waiting there for you if you do.
Undeniably so. Okay, so where is this all leading us? Where are we going with this? Certainly to a place where businesses need to think about the value equation in terms that are far beyond a pure price discussion. Price is undoubtedly, as you've seen over the last 20 minutes or so, is undoubtedly part of this equation, but trusted quality and the factors that go into that deserve more consideration.
Yeah, David, absolutely. I mean, look, shopper expectations on price are high. We know that. But it's far more nuanced than just simply going for the lowest price. So we shouldn't just be defaulting to price to demonstrate value. I mean, we can do this through so many other ways. We can do it through product hierarchies or stratification, good, better, best. We can do it through education at shelf. We can do it through information on pack. We can do it through brand stories, the authenticity angle. My brand has been around for X, Y, Z and has this heritage and everything else that's associated with it. We can do it through health attributes. We can do it through sustainability chops. We can do it through all these things. It's about balancing those demands of shoppers. So, to do that, you need to understand what those factors look like in your categories.
So, in other words, if price is what matters most to shoppers in your category, then absolutely elevate it within your strategy. Give it the attention it deserves in your conversations with retailers, right?
Absolutely. If price matters in your category, then you've got to make sure that you check that price box. You've got to do it. But by contrast, if there's that clear case for premium as well, then you've got to factor that in too. If point of origin matters in your category, New Zealand made, then talk to that to help define value in your category. It isn't just a race to the bottom. So if there's 3 things that I would like anybody watching this video to take out from this, that would be these 3 things. Firstly, it's about you do not need to default to price necessarily to actually understand, to define value. It's not all about price. There are other factors in there. The second piece is you've got to understand what those specific factors are in your category to help define that value. And the third thing is use those suite of tools that you have available to you. So the shelf, your own individual packs, the store mechanics that are available to you, your communication strategy. Use all those that are available to you to help reframe that value equation, and don't just necessarily default to thinking you have to be the cheapest.
Thank you, Andrew. 3 key things there to take away And that wraps up part 1 of the 2021 New Zealand State of the Nation series. If you're interested in how occasion-based shopping is impacting behaviour, then head to part 2 of the series. If you're focused on how to better serve the needs of online shoppers in your category, then check out part 3. And if you have any questions at all about how to get the most from your categories, then just drop Andrew a line.